So a few years ago, we saw leg attacks really pop onto the scene in the jiu-jitsu world, and there were a lot of questions regarding when that would eventually transfer over to MMA. I'm not going to say that's happened now, but there have been a handful of leg attack or leg locks that have been landed in the UFC recently. And tonight at UFC Fight Night, Figueiredo Benavvidez, UFC Fight Island 2, we saw a couple. So I'm going to show a couple of these. I'm going to show the Jack Hermansson one against Kelvin Gastelum, and then I'll also show the one that Ariane Lipski was able to hit. So we'll start off with the Hermansson one. I'm not going to show the entire sequence all the way through just for copyright reasons, so I'm just kind of going to go step by step here. But what's interesting about the Hermansson heel hook is that he actually used the same setup twice. Gastelum was able to evade the first time. The second time he was not able to do so, and I'll talk about why. So we start off here. Hermansson, the setup he's going to use is he's going to have his far side left leg as a half butterfly hook. He doesn't have a butterfly hook with the other leg. That's why it's half butterfly. What he's going to do is he's going to use that butterfly hook to elevate Gastelum's hips. And then as he elevates it, he'll bring his right leg around and then try to reap across the hip to control the hip and then also be above the knee line. So elevates. He's going to bring this leg around here. At this point, it's kind of like a single leg X position, so it's not quite in yet. Gastelum's starting to stand up, though, and get his hips high. Pushes down, you can see here. You can see Hermansson also trying to reach across here with the far leg to hook behind the knee. That's actually a huge detail in why he was able to get it the second time. But for Gastelum this time, the hook isn't in quite just yet. He's able to push the leg down, gets his knee pretty much free at this point. It's past the hip line. So for this reason, he's going to be able to get out. So escapes, decides to go back into it, which in theory, I don't think it's the worst idea for Kelvin. He's a brown belt under 10th Planet. A lot of the guys he trains with also like to go for leg attacks. I'm sure he has familiarity with the position. I guess after you defend it one time, you think, okay, well, it's probably not going to get any more difficult for me to defend it after this. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Hermansson was able to make a small little timing adjustment that made a huge difference on the second time around. So again, he goes back into the guard, starts off as double butterfly, but eventually he's going to go back to half butterfly. It's a little bit too far ahead. So again, we have this half butterfly here. He's going to look to elevate the hips. There we go. Elevates the hips, and then he's going to bring that leg around again, trying to reap across. And again, this time goes for that hook on the far leg, and this time he catches it right away. So again, at this specific point, it looks like he's pretty close to losing the knee. Like the knee isn't necessarily controlled by the hip or controlled at the hip. But because he has this far hook right here, he's going to be able to pull Gastelum back in. He's also going to make it difficult for Gastelum to escape the exact same way. He'll actually be able to trip him with it. And while still controlling the lower end of the leg here, as Gastelum falls down, he'll be able to pull the knee back in and get control of it again. So here he makes a quick adjustment. Now he's above the knee again, has control of it. He's going to hook underneath the leg to help trip Gastelum up. He already has the leg behind Gastelum's right leg. Again, and this detail here is huge. Hermansson's left foot going behind Gastelum's right leg really is the big reason why Hermansson's able to catch this. If he does not have this detail, I highly doubt he catches this heel hook here. And it's something that was actually missed on the broadcast, which surprised me. For some of the tweets that I saw, like Ben Askren was like, wow, I can't believe he was unable to escape that. I saw a couple other people tweeting about how Kelvin Gastelum's leg lock defense was shoddy here because he wasn't able to get out. A lot of people were overlooking this detail here, and this detail was a big reason why Gastelum wasn't able to get out, because it's not as though he did a terrible job of defending it. It's just that a lot of the common defenses you would expect are being shut down by this hook. For one, if Gastelum's going to want to roll, this hook's going to keep him from rolling once he gets to the ground. And also, if Gastelum wants to kick out, the fact that he has this foot behind his knee is going to be able to control his leg and keep him from really being able to manipulate and get in the right position he wants. So while Gastelum's trying to adjust his leg and eventually kick his way out, Hermansson can just be cranking on his heel, and that's really not a position you want to be stuck in. So again, huge detail here is this left foot behind the right knee. But now Gastelum's going to try to pull his way out. Hermansson's got a good bite down on the knee right here, has the foot behind the knee, which again, I feel like I brought it up a bunch of times, but it's a huge detail, so it needs to be brought up. So tries to escape, isn't quite able to get the knee out, but again, at this point, Hermansson's going to be able to adjust. He still has that foot behind the knee, and he keeps it there the whole time. So now he's starting to adjust. Again, still foot behind the knee and tight. This is keeping Gastelum from rolling. And again, you want him to be able to kick on the butt, but again, for him to kick on the butt, he has to push his leg down this way. If Hermansson's foot is behind the knee, Hermansson can extend the leg out and keep him from really either being able to kick in the first place or being able to get any power on that kick. Now here he's actually going to feed his second leg through as well and get that behind the knee. Has that fed through. And at this point, he's over top of the knee. He's got a bite on the heel. This is donezo. Just great job by Jack Hermansson. Getting control behind Gastelum's far knee on the leg he was not attacking was a gigantic detail here. And it's what's going to be able to get him to finish. And there's the tap. So the other leg lock that we got on this card was not as technically brilliant as the Jack Hermansson one. Obviously, we were pointing out the great detail that Hermansson had by controlling behind the right knee of Kelvin Gastelum. In this specific case, Lipski actually put herself in a pretty bad position. And there are some submissions in jiu-jitsu, and for the most part, if you're submitting someone in jiu-jitsu, generally you dominate a position and you fed them into a position you want. But there are sometimes submissions where the other person's attacking you, but they make a fatal mistake, and so you're able to make them pay. The most common one that you'll probably hear about is when someone has your back and they cross their ankles, and then you're able to ankle lock them. So even though you didn't want to give up your back, you can still get a submission if they cross their ankles. To an extent, that's kind of the same idea of what happened here, in that Lipski got herself in a really bad position, but was able to take advantage of a big mistake that Carolina made and finish her off. So we start off here where they're standing up. Lipski kind of gives Carolina an angle here. I don't know that Carolina was necessarily looking for a calf slicer or even like the bear trap type of position for it, but by angling off here, she definitely made it possible. So what Carolina's going to do is going to bring her leg across. She's going to bring the outside leg across to go behind the knee. And once you get into this bear trap position, there's a lot you can do with it. There's the calf slicer, which is what she was going for. You can also extend someone out and then get an eventual back take off of it. But if you're looking for the submission, the calf slicer is definitely the first option you want to look for before you decide to give that up and then try to take the back. So she's going to bring her leg across here. She wants to get behind the knee with her shin, and eventually is able to do so there. So at this point for Carolina, now that she's behind the knee, what she's going to want to be able to do is extend Lipski out and then pull her at the hips back down to get a lot of pressure behind the knee. And we'll get a better camera angle on that soon. So she's already pulling at the hips, but isn't really extending out here. And the extension is a really big detail in being able to get the calf slicer. All right, so here's a better angle of it. So again, you can see she's behind the knee, which is good for the calf slicer. Ideally, and it's a pretty big detail, you want to have the other leg triangled around your other foot here. And that's something that Lipski's going to fight the entire way before she eventually gets the knee bar. But that is a huge detail for Carolina. If you can't get it triangled, there are some other ways to do it. Typically, if I can't get it triangled, what I'll try to do is kick my foot on my other foot and then use that to extend out. But you definitely have to be careful about having your leg controlled, because as you can see here, you do have this one leg isolated between the two legs of your opponent. But if you have control of their leg that you're going for the calf slicer on, this is definitely a position where you should be in control, not them. So again, we're seeing Lipski fight that leg the entire time. And that is a good detail for Lipski. This is very important that she is focusing on that leg. Even if she doesn't catch the knee bar just for defensive purposes, it's going to make it a lot harder for Carolina to extend her out on this calf slicer. So attacking the leg is good here. But for Carolina, you have to understand the importance of this leg here. And really be careful about it, but you don't want to let it get straightened out. You're going to have to curl it down and keep Lipski from pulling it in. But if she does start to pull it in, you're going to have to bail at some point, because at this point, Lipski doesn't really have a ton of control of her knee. Eventually, she's going to get control of that knee, though. So for Carolina, you have to understand the importance of this position. You have to understand that if you can't get your leg down and really get a good bite down here on top of your instep, if you can't kick off of your foot either to extend out, and you feel like the calf slicer isn't there, you really have to be careful about this knee bar, and you really have to be careful about letting your knee get past the hip line of Lipski. So again, Lipski's still fighting. It doesn't really have an angle here on the knee bar yet. Now she pulls the knee past the knee line. But again, at this point, one hand on the mat, one hand kind of scooping here. You would figure that Carolina can bite down her leg really hard right now. And even if she doesn't get it on top of her foot, she can still make the angle a lot tougher for Lipski to be able to pull it down and straighten it out. So if I'm Carolina, I'm extending out at the hip here with the, this is her right leg, which is the one that's underneath the calf, or underneath the knee of Lipski that she's attacking. But then from here, you have to extend that one out too, and also get it at an angle where Lipski can't attack it, and she's really just going to leave it here and leave it hanging. So Lipski's able to go right back to it. Good job here by grabbing at the heel. That's a good little detail to make it a little bit easier to isolate the leg and to be able to pull on it. It's the for this end of the lever, effectively, is the physics behind that. So it keeps pulling on it. Again, there's really no extension here. And now her leg starts to get straightened at this point. And her Carolina is just completely screwed. Yes, she has the calf behind here, but there's no extension on here, so there's really no pressure there. So at this point, calf slicer isn't super dangerous. Yes, this isn't very comfortable for Lipski, but since there's no extension, it definitely makes things a lot easier for her, and she's just going to hit back into this. And what's kind of interesting about this position is that once she starts tipping back in, you don't want to be pulling her into as well. You kind of want to be pushing her back. This is pretty late in the game, but you don't want to be pulling her in. But she is going to pull her in, tap out, and that's the submission.